Good morning. This is Green Mountain Mornings on KVT Talk, where Brattleboro listens. I'm your host, Olga Peters. So glad you can be joining me today. And in the studio, I have Wendy Levy from the Commons. Hello, Wendy.
Hello, Olga. Good morning.
Good morning.
It's Friday.
Yay! Do the happy dance. Ready?
We made it.
We made it. We made it. We made it. I also want to remind listeners that this segment of Green Mountain Mornings is being filmed by BCTV. It will be online later. And broadcast of Green Mountain Mornings tonight is sponsored by Brattleboro Savings and Loan.
I'm going to try really hard not to break the fourth wall, but it's really tempting.
I know, because it's right there.
Yeah.
In the shape of Nolan. Which reminds us.
Yes.
You had an interview with Roland.
I did. Brian.
And Brian.
Yeah.
Because there's a changing of the guards happening at BCTV.
Yeah, the change from what I hear has already happened. So yeah, Roland, oh gosh, what's his last name? See, I write these stories and everything disappears out of my head. Boyden. Roland Boyden, who had been with BCTV since before he graduated high school, and now I think he said he's 29, maybe. Mm-hmm. And who started the news program? 545 Live? Is that what it was called? See, I wrote this a week ago, 2 weeks ago, so of course I forget everything. Anyway, he is moving on to Philadelphia.
Wow.
He's moving to the big city, and that's a pretty big change for BCTV because he helped so many people put together programming, and when I talked to him, that seemed to really be his passion. Is community access to media, and getting anybody with an idea. All you need is an idea to come in and do a show. You don't have to have any experience. You don't have to have writing, television, any kind of experience. And they'll help you. And I think that's a really important resource. As somebody who myself is very involved in local media. I mean, I'm on your show every other week. Mm-hmm. I have 2 of my own radio shows on community radio stations, one here in Brattleboro and one in Bellows Falls. And I write for The Commons, which is a nonprofit newspaper that has the Media Mentoring Project to get people into it. So yeah, I'm all about community access to media as well. And so it was a good time talking to Roland, and then Brian sat in on us. Brian Bashaw, he's I don't want to call him the new Roland. That's not fair. But he's taken Roland's role there. And he comes from Fact TV up in Bellows Falls, so he also has that background. And yeah, I think BCTV will be in good hands.
Yeah, they were really lucky to find Brian because I remember Roland talking to me when he mentioned that he was leaving, and he says, one of the things that's going to be really tricky is, you can have someone with technical skills, you can have someone with people skills. They don't always happen in the same person.
No, they really don't. It's sort of like left brain, right brain stuff, like the person who's really great at math might not be really great at writing. So yeah, it's a similar thing, but they found him. Yeah. There he is. He was there he was. So, I say welcome to him, and I wish him all the success. And I think it'll be interesting to see what kind of new programming comes out on BCTV as a result of him being there. When he and I were talking, he had mentioned that he has a strong interest in film. And, some folks may know that Fact is producing their own television series.
Yeah.
I guess they're working on the second episode. It's the what is it? Strange Things at the Vilas Bridge or something?
That sounds right.
I only wrote a story about it, but again, it was months ago, so now I forget almost everything about it. But, I watched the first episode and I thought it was really well done. And so if Brian can bring something of that caliber down to BCTV, that could also be really exciting.
Looking forward to seeing what happens at BCTV.
Me too.
And welcome to Brian and fond farewell to Roland.
Indeed.
Wendy and I have to go to break, but we shall return in a moment. We are back, and this is Green Mountain Mornings on KVT Talk, where Brattleboro listens. I'm your host, Olga Peters. Welcome back to the show, Wendy Levy from the Commons.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning. Tell us, Wendy, what's happening in Guilford with a solar array and a CPG?
Oh boy, well this is an interesting story. So
Okay.
a couple weeks ago, there was a lengthy discussion at the select board meeting, and select board chair Sheila Morse was very careful to say, we're not adjudicating this, we're just hearing this. So a couple of folks who live on property that abuts the solar array that's on, I don't know if folks know where Kirchheimer Drive is, but it's off of sort of like Tater Lane, how it turns into Creamery Road that comes onto Guilford Center Road, like you know where Blueberry House is?
Yeah.
So Tater Lane runs from that. So anyway, there's a parcel of land where a solar array went up about 2 years ago. I actually covered it. It's on Will Wonus's land. Sovereign Solar constructed it, and the net metering contract is with the Vermont State Employees Credit Union. And so I don't remember. I think it's like 500 kilowatt. It's a big array. It's pretty big. It will give VSECU enough net metering credits to power all of their branches in the entire state.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's pretty substantial. I think it was, I've seen two figures for the cost, 1 million and 2.5 million. That's quite a big margin, but it's at least $1 million project. So it's already done. It's hooked up. It's been online since October of 2016. So the reason why it's coming up in the select board meeting is some of the neighbors who abut the property have complained to the Public Utilities Commission that they were never properly notified about the site's location, because the array's location on that parcel of land changed from the original certificate for public good.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
And so with that change, there was supposed to have been a 45-day comment period, which, happened with the original CPG, where neighbors, places like Wyndham Regional Commission, Select Board, Planning Commission, folks like that could chime in about, the project, its, where it's sited, and its, relevance to the public good. So when the site moved, the neighbors never got a 45-day notice. A couple of them. Some of the neighbors never got, they're claiming they never got the 45-day notice. And Sovereign Solar didn't file the proper paperwork to change their certificate for public good.
Okay.
And so the Public Utilities Commission fined Sovereign $5,000 for not filing properly and failure to notice. Sovereign's claiming that they did mail out those notices. And some neighbors got them and some neighbors didn't. And so now these neighbors are claiming that the solar array's location where it was actually built, which they said they didn't have the opportunity to comment on, is interfering with their view because they can see it more than the original project said they would be able to. And it's worth noting that the reason why it got moved in the first place was because one of the neighbors who did get a notification said, this is going to be too visible from my property. Can you move it? So, yeah. And so, right. So they're also claiming, some of the neighbors are claiming that wildlife has diminished greatly. And they also question its ability to still be used as agricultural land because it's a field and the property owner has to pay taxes on it. And the property owner sort of leases the field to the Franklins who mow it for hay. And they're still able to do that, though. So that's a little point of contention because the abutting neighbors are questioning whether it's still usable as agricultural land. And David Franklin appeared at the Planning Commission meeting and was like, I still mow that field.
Yeah.
So,
sorry to stop your train of thought there, but what is the neighbors who are saying that we're not sure this can be used for agricultural land? What's their reasoning?
Because of I think because of the site of it and the way it's arranged on the land, it was a little unclear I wasn't able to get that. I mean, they had quite a few complaints about the project, and there's been an attempt at some like negotiation and mediation, but it seems like the abutting neighbors are pretty adamant that there's really no compromise here. Like they want the Public Utility Commission to deny the amendment to the CPG, which basically would mean that the CPG would get revoked.
So they would have to pull out the entire solar project and
I
dismantle it.
think so. I'm still trying to get information about that. I contacted the Public Utilities Commission's clerk and, just to get some procedural information, like, has this ever happened in the state before where a solar array, their CPG was revoked? Like, has this ever happened? Is there precedent on this? Because I can't think of anything.
I can't either, but that doesn't mean it hasn't
Right.
happened.
And I mean,
I can think of a few things that going into the process, neighbors wanted something moved, something
Sure.
changed, a project got bigger or smaller.
right, that's why you have the 45-day comment period.
But for a project that's been built,
Right, that's
and
been
it's
online.
on private land,
Yeah,
and it's online, and it's gone through the process, even with an amendment.
yeah.
Yeah, I haven't
I know
heard of that before.
Yeah, I haven't either. And another question I had for the clerk there, and I'm still waiting to hear back, is are there any other power generating plants of any type, whether it's solar, wind, hydro, etc., that have had their CPG revoked, and what happened? Because I think that whatever happens with this situation, and however you feel about it, whether you're interested in solar as long as it doesn't interfere, or you hate it completely, this brings up an interesting case that could have an effect in the future if the project's CPG is revoked. And at the select board meeting, where the select board was basically asked to listen to the case and make a comment as they're able to do, which they've tabled that, at least, as has the planning commission. Neither of those entities are making a comment yet. Anyway, one of the arguments that Peter Thorell, who is the owner of Sovereign Solar, made is he said, well, the certificate for public good is about public good. And we're talking about all of these kilowatts of power for all these branches, and all the people benefiting from this versus a small number of private landowners. So what does the public good mean? And that's a good question, but the people who
It's an
live
intriguing question, yeah.
it is, but the people who live next door to it, they're also part of the public. So in my
Right.
mind, it's like, well, what are we even talking about?
Right.
So I thought that's a valid question, but you could really pick that apart with a fine-tooth comb if you really wanted to. But I get that, he's trying to defend his project because that would be a huge loss. But then it brings up the question, like, at what cost?
Right.
Like, when is something like too big to fail, so to
Right.
speak?
Yeah.
But yeah, and Guilford, like many small towns around here, has no zoning. So there's not as much local control that can happen.
Right.
Yeah, and during the select board meeting, Peter Thorell made kind of a funny comment, which personally I thought might have been a little flip, but I think it also brings up a valid point. He said something along the lines of, well, I'm not as smart as Dan Ingold. So Dan Ingold has also built solar arrays in Guilford, and what he was referring to was that Dan would call together at select board meetings and such, he would have community forums to talk about a project that was happening, so that it gave another way for people to be informed
Right.
and to make comment.
And to engage.
Right. So, I don't think that happened with this solar array. I don't remember it. That doesn't mean it didn't happen, but it sounds like, at least from what Thorell was saying, that it didn't. And that, that might be something to think about for the future, is a letter, because he said that his employee sent it first class, not registered or certified.
I was going to ask about that.
Nope.
Because, yeah.
So you have you put a stamp on it, you put it in the mailbox, it probably will get there, but sometimes things happen anywhere along the line.
Yeah.
And so, is there a better way to do the due diligence to make sure that your neighbors know? So this is a story I'll be following. And that story the one that we're talking about right now, should come out next week. But, for folks who are interested in, forms of energy that aren't, that are renewable, and, things like property rights and such, it's something worth paying attention to.
Well, Wendy, thank you for that. We have to go to commercial break, but Wendy and I will return in a few.
See you on the radio.
Yes, see you on the radio. You are listening to Green Mountain Mornings, and this is KVT Talk, where Brattleboro listens. I'm your host, Olga Peters. Happy Friday, everyone out there.
Yay.
Do the happy dance.
Happy dance.
Happy dance. Hey, Wendy Levy from the Commons, thank you so much for being on the show with me today.
Thank you for inviting me, Olga Peters.
So tell us, there is developments in Townsend. They might be getting a Dollar General.
I know, lucky them. So I went to a community forum last Thursday night at the town hall. A group, an ad hoc grassroots group formed, and they have a long name, and I don't remember it. It's something about Townsend residents who are concerned with, it's a really long name. Basically, they don't want Dollar General.
Okay.
And so they called a community forum, and it was moderated by our pal Charlie Marchant, who some folks may know. He lives in Townsend, and he, for a long time, had a really cool feature in the Commons where he would supply it, the paper with the old
Help Charlie.
postcard. Yeah, Help Charlie.
Okay.
And, he would solicit people who knew where these pictures were taken. So, yes, and he's part of the Wardsboro photography club thing that was working on the Porter Thayer project. Anyway, Charlie, pal of the paper. Anyway, he was moderating the forum, and so the deal is the Zaremba Group, which is a developer they're a real estate developer that builds projects mostly for chain stores around the country. I think they're based in Cleveland, Ohio, I want to say. They went around to Townsend looking for property to build a Dollar General.
Okay.
And I don't know if they had done their research or if they're just lucky, but their store that they want to build is 7,500 square feet on a small enough parcel of land that they don't have to go through Act 250.
They were probably strategic about that.
Pretty sneaky, sis. Anyway, so they approached Kit Martin, who owns the Townsend Auction House, and he also owns the property that Lawrence's Smoke Shop sits. The place where you get the smoked meats, and they have other stuff. Not like a cigarette smoke shop, but smoked meats. They
and it's
smoke their own
right
meats.
next to the Riverbend Market.
It
as
sure
well.
is.
Okay.
Yep. So I want to make it really clear that in writing my story, which came out on Wednesday, I was not able to reach Kit Martin.
Okay.
I called the auction house. I talked to an employee there who didn't want to give me their name, didn't want to answer any questions. I explained I just want to do some fact checking, etc., and give Kit a chance to speak. Couldn't talk to him. I also tried the same with Terry Lawrence, who owns Lawrence's Smoke Shop. And the reason why I wanted to talk to Terry Lawrence at Lawrence's Smoke Shop is because if Dollar General buys this property that Kit Martin owns, Lawrence's Smoke Shop can't be there. It has to move.
Oh, does Kit also own
He owns the property.
that property under the smokehouse? Okay.
Yeah. So, that's why as I tell the story, I want to make really clear that I don't have this as firsthand knowledge.
Okay. That you made multiple attempts.
I made
but
attempts,
no calls were returned.
and I couldn't talk to folks. So the gist of it is Dollar General wants to come and build. They'll make a decision in the fall. From what I hear, from what was discussed at the forum, there's a purchase and sale contract. So there are some contingencies to it. I don't know what they are. Dollar General would have to get a wastewater permit through the state,
Okay.
which, that may fail. Who knows? But with a purchase and sale contract, it's highly likely, or I should say it's highly unlikely that this won't happen. So Lawrence's Smoke Shop, which has been there since I think the 1960s.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and was built by family members of Terry Lawrence. And I couldn't confirm whether it's her parents or her aunt and uncle, grandparents, I don't know. But other Lawrences, that shop would be gone. And I don't know if she would move, build somewhere else. But again, from what I understand, the property wasn't even on the market. Zaremba went kind of shopping around and Kit decided to sell. I don't know why. I mean, I know that his partner passed away, I think last year or the year before,
Sounds right.
Art Monette. So who knows? Maybe his finances dictate. Maybe it was an offer that was too good to refuse. But people in Townsend, overwhelmingly, at least who came to the forum and spoke, and also who filled out a survey, because this resistance group created a survey, most people do not want Dollar General in Townsend. So the concern is that the West River Valley corridor is a scenic corridor,
Yep.
and it has almost completely, independent businesses. I mean, there's an Irving gas station and things like that, but we're talking about independently owned grocery stores, a general store or two, some food places, the smoke shop, the diner, etc. So people are really upset about this. And some of the things that came up in the meeting is something that we actually brought up in an earlier segment today is zoning. Townsend
Right.
has no zoning. So there's not a lot the town can do. There's no development review board. What can people do? One of the strategies that was brought up at the forum last week, of which there are about 125 people there, not all of them from Townsend. I want to make sure, I'm clear about that. One strategy, and the group is petitioning the select board for this, is a town can implement interim zoning.
Oh,
It's a very
That's
specific, yeah, I didn't know about that. It's a specific short-term zoning law that would basically buy the town some time. However, because this purchase and sale contract has already gone into effect, even if they passed it, it would be hard to argue that it would have an effect on a contract already in place.
well, and there's also the difficulty, too, that even if Townsend had zoning, as the DRB can't decide whether one business is more worthy over another
Right.
business.
Right.
And so even with the zoning,
Yeah, that's true. I mean, they could say, like what happened in Wilmington, which is, I think, a story that you covered when they wanted to put the Dunkin' Donuts in there, is that, well, you have to have a certain kind of signage, you have to have a certain type of roof line, different architectural features. We don't want just like this, like box,
Right.
This vinyl sided box in our town. You have to make it look a little bit like what else is there.
right, but they couldn't say, yes, we want a Dunkin' Donuts, or no, we don't want a Dunkin'
Right,
Donuts, because it fit the zoning for that area.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So, yeah, zoning isn't the be all end all, but it was interesting to watch and hear, I should say, to hear people stand up and say, I'm not for zoning. I don't like zoning, but I also want a say in what our town looks like. And so what is worse? Maybe we need zoning. And other folks were saying, yeah, zoning isn't like a cookie cutter thing. We, as people who live in the town, can participate in what the zoning looks like. I mean, Dummerston was able to do it, and there was some argument about what that even looked like in Dummerston, but we're talking about a town that has lots and lots of dirt roads,
Right.
and they were able to come up with some zoning. So I don't know. I don't live in either of those towns, so I don't have a dog in that race, but I think those are valid questions to be asked. Absolutely, is what do you want your town to look like, and what kind of changes can you make, and what kind of systems can you put into place to try to guide that? Or is it futile? Because if Dollar General comes in and they want to build in rural areas,
Yeah.
they want to put their stores in places where people are struggling. They're a dollar store, they're a discount store.
Right.
So is there anything that can be done? What I will say about that forum, absolutely, is that people were very respectful. Most people didn't want Dollar General, but nobody said anything judgmental or unkind about Kit Martin, about his decisions. He wasn't there. People were really careful to be supportive of their local people, even if they didn't necessarily understand why they were making the decisions that they did. So I was glad to hear that. There was one person who got up and said that she was representing the other side, but she didn't even necessarily say that she wanted a Dollar General there. She just said, do we know why Kit is making this decision? Do we know what he's up against? You know, it would be a shame if we didn't. She was the only person who spoke up in favor, and I was kind of a little disappointed. I wish that other people, because there were other people there who who disagreed a little bit. I would have liked to have heard their points too. Some folks who wanted a Dollar General did fill out the survey, and they said things like, you know, do you know what it's like living on a minimum wage? This could really help people, you know, who are on a tight budget. And that's a valid point too. What do you do? You know, these are big questions, and they're really big questions that go beyond even what a small town can do. I mean, you know, people are struggling everywhere.
Yeah. For folks who talked about not wanting the Dollar General, was it because it wasn't locally owned?
That was a big part of it.
Okay.
Yeah, that they want to retain the unique character of Townsend and the surrounding towns, and by having stores that could be anywhere, it takes away from that. And they want the local, you know, they want local dollars staying local.
Yeah.
Dollar General is based in Tennessee.
Right.
That money's going there. It's not staying in Townsend.
That's true.
And people were also concerned with aesthetics. The folks who organized it, this resistance group, had printed out a bunch of articles about other towns in Vermont that had fought Dollar General, mostly with no success, mostly in vain. I think there was one or two successes, and showed pictures of what the other Dollar General stores look like. And some of them, they really did try to fit in with the vernacular a little bit.
Yeah.
And some of them, they didn't have to, and they didn't. But at the forum, they talked about Chester. So
yes.
Yeah, so you may know something about that. So Chester spent something like 3 or 4 years and $70,000 trying to fight Dollar General coming in, and it didn't work.
No. Nope. Well, zoning, even though it's probably better to have it than not, it's not going to protect against everything.
Right, because Chester has zoning, I think.
I believe so,
Yeah, I think they do. So, yeah, I mean, and this brings up a lot of questions, as I said, that go beyond what local people can do, such as, like, is this okay? What makes it okay? Like, what's the line between local control and maybe discrimination? These are big questions.
Yes. Well, do you think you're going to be following this story? So it hasn't quite run its course yet.
No. But, it remains to be seen what happens with the contingencies and the due diligence if Dollar General decides to build there. And if not, what next? Will the people be rallied enough? Because a lot of them spoke of this, even if we can't prevent Dollar General, what can we do to stop further development of this type in the corridor? So it remains to be seen.
Wendy Levy, thank you so much for coming in.
Thanks for having me, Olga. Have a good weekend.
You too.
Thanks.